Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yacker. My guest in today's show is Frank Kimbler, an earth science assistant professor at the New Mexico Military Institute. I'll be yakking with him about xenoarchaeology, the science of hunting alien artifacts. Frank Kimbler, welcome to Paranormal Yacker.
I'm glad you had me on. I like talking about UFOs. I like talking about the idea behind xenoarchaeology. This is fun stuff. I love it.
In addition to teaching earth science, you have worked as a professional geologist and oceanographer for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and as a mining engineer for the state of Arizona. When and how did your interest in UFOs and more specifically hunting for alien artifacts come about?
For a young age, ever since I was like 10, 11 years old, I was interested in UFOs. A really, really good friend of mine had a subscription to Project Blue Book. And every now and then he would get a new update. He'd say, "Hey, Frank," he was just like 12 or 13 years old. And he was really interested in it. He would show me all these cool magazines and stuff. And I sort of picked up on that. I've always did like the idea behind something visiting us from another world. Always fascinated me. I'm a firm believer that we're not the only ones in the smart things in the universe, that there are others out there as well, and they probably visit us. I got interested in this when I actually first moved out to Roswell, visited the UFO museum, and I noticed that there was no physical evidence in hand. And I'm going, well, there's lots of pictures and lots of eyewitness accounts. Basically, what it boiled down to, I said, well, I'm going to use my knowledge of geology, and I'm going to go and see if I can find something that nobody else has found before. That's how this all got started.
And what you just said, Frank, perfect segue to my next question for you. Your research has resulted in the discovery of a number of physical artifacts from the Roswell UFO debris area. Could you describe some of those artifacts?
I certainly can. I'd be happy to describe those artifacts. They are small fragments. I think the largest one ever found was maybe 10 millimeters long by about maybe 4 or 5 millimeters wide. It's very thin. It's about the thickness of, it's a little bit thicker than aluminum foil. Some of it is the thickness of aluminum foil. Probably found maybe 30 or 40 fragments out there. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you would, or should I say, somebody off the street would say, oh, this is trash from a camper because it looks like aluminum like that you would find at a campsite. But this material is shredded up. It's in really small pieces. And it's the kind of material that you would find the military would leave behind because they couldn't find it. Got washed into a rat hole somewhere, got covered up by dust or dirt. So a lot of these pieces are very small. They're twisted, they're folded, they're mangled up. Some of them are melted as if they've been through an explosion. Some of them have tiny little pits in them. And I looked at the pits under a microscope. The pits are from an explosion, is what they're from. And it's called explosive cratering. So I've seen the explosive cratering. These things are curled. Some of them are curled on the ends that looks like the type of curling you would get from an explosion. That's just the metallic pieces that I found, but there's also some non-metallic bakelite-like plastic material that sort of fits the description of what was found out there, or described as being a plastic-like bakelite material, dark in color. I actually found some pieces of that out there, and it was not in the same location that I had found all the metallic pieces, although I did find some at that location, but not a majority of it. And these pieces are found well away from the haunts of where people would go hiking or camping or whatever. So it's kind of remote. That's the story behind those artifacts. There's lots of pictures of them out on the internet. People can go and Google me and say Frank Kimbler, Roswell artifacts, and they can pull up a number of pictures that show this material.
Xenoarchaeology, which is concerned with the study of material remains of extraterrestrials, is not currently practiced by mainstream archaeologists. What is the reason for that?
It is not. That word xenoarchaeology, it's not practiced mainstream, not at all. In fact, that word xenoarchaeology actually came out of a science fiction book, science fiction stories, science fiction movies. And I grabbed that, the word xenoarchaeology, people kind of picked up on it. And I says, this is really kind of cool. A while back when I had a little spat with the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, I read the reports that they had that it was a Freedom of Information Act that the Black Vault acquired. I read through that Freedom of Information Act, and they said, oh, Frank Kimbler claims to be a xenoarchaeologist, and we're not familiar with that field. That's because they don't read science fiction books. I love the title, xenoarchaeology, because it conjures up visions of extraterrestrials. I mean, that's exactly what it does. I use that in one of my talks. It is kind of spread around a little bit.
You have said in the past that there are lots of unidentified possible alien artifacts to study, but the scientific community and universities scoff at the notion of doing research on almost anything related to the idea of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Do you see the mentality changing?
It's been a while since that mentality, or should I say that universities still want to stay away from this, as far as I know. Now, I haven't spoke to any in a while, but it seems like that because of all the information that's coming out, especially with the Tic Tac events and some of the other things that To the Stars Academy has come out with, and some of the really exciting things that have been showing up on the TV, on the History Channel, it's becoming a little more mainstream.
How do fellow academics look at your pursuit of researching and investigating the possibility of the existence of alien artifacts, and what feedback, if any, have you received from them?
Where I work, we have a lot of believers in the Roswell crash site. Also, not only my peers, but people that are in the profession of teaching and the profession of science, they kind of applaud what I do. And the reason why is I apply good science to it. I don't have any books that are out there. 100% I don't claim that this material is of extraterrestrial origin. What I do say is we have some materials that are anomalous. It needs a little more testing because you need to have 3 independent laboratories confirmed. I can get 1, I can get 2, but sometimes it's hard to get that 3rd one. So I've had no issues with that. I've even had a couple of people out there. I'll mention one. I've had some people stand up for me. They say, Frank has done some good work. He knows what he's doing. He does good science. One of them that stood up for me has been nominated for a Nobel Prize in physics, not once, but 3 times. To get that kind of accolade from a scientist like that, I won't mention his name, he's well known, but to get that kind of accolade from a scientist made me feel tremendously good. Lets me know that, they believe in what I do. Those people don't have bad things to say. Yeah, there's always the naysayers. You always get that group of people that say, oh, he just wants media attention. He just wants this, or he's a sociopath or whatever. I'm far from that. The media attention, I don't actively go after that. People contact me and say, hey, you want to be on our show? You want to do a documentary? And I'll say, sure. You know what? Let's make sure that people know what's going on.
At the International UFO Congress, you gave a presentation that focused on current and past research related to the discovery of possible extraterrestrial artifacts, the facts, the fakes, and the dreams. I love that title. Could you expand on that?
Oh, the facts, the fakes, and the dreams. Oh my goodness. There was one particular item that I talked about, which was down in South America. And it was a beautiful piece. When you held it up, you could see through it and they would move it around. I looked at that. I actually did a little bit of science behind that. And I was able to duplicate that in my house. It was very easy to do. And I'm going, well, this is something, there's an old technique out there called Pepper's Ghost, and it's used for making ghosts in the background. Came out in the latter part of the 1800s. People can look it up. It's called Pepper's Ghost. They use it at modified versions of that at Disneyland and other places and circuses to fool people. I saw that and I'm going, okay, so that's a little bit of shenanigans going on there to try to convince people. As much as I hate to say this, the general population is pretty gullible about a lot of things. And I'm not trying to insult folks. They believe a lot of things, especially if somebody mainstream comes out and says, they say, oh, look at this. Or if it shows up on other types of social media. Another one that I saw, which was really kind of interesting, came out in a documentary about the Peruvian alien mummies in Peru or something like that. I watched that documentary and I'm going, oh my goodness, they've got a piece of the magic Roswell foil that when you hold in your hand and then you let it go, it unfolds. You can actually buy that material now. It's not something that it's called nitinol. You can buy that foil. It's about $100 for like 4 square inches. That's about the thickness of aluminum foil. And it is really cool because you can take it, crumple it up in your hand and open it up and it unfolds. It's our technology, some of which they say is wired from other places. Then there's been other places, meaning extraterrestrials. There was another one of these. There was Ubatuba event, which was a very old one. That one's been well studied as a fragment of magnesium metal. That one could very well be real. I don't know. I'd like to see some more studies on that one. And the material that came from the mountain over in Russia, height 571, I'm not sure about the name. some of the artifacts that came from the top of that mountain from a alleged UFO crash site had some pretty interesting anomalies to it. So those things may very well be true. Some of the stuff that's in the hands of, which I have not seen, but some of the material that's in the hands of To the Stars Academy, especially the layered material, that bismuth, magnesium bismuth layered material that Linda Moulton Howe had. I've had that material in my hand. It's a very nice lady. I looked at that stuff. It's pretty bizarre. It's currently under investigation by our government to see exactly what kind of properties that this material has. It is pretty darn unusual. That's the most unique. And I've talked about a number of these things in that talk that I gave at the UFO Congress. But those are just some of the highlights of the ones. And then, of course, I talked about my stuff.
Xenoarchaeology is defined as a hypothetical form of archaeology that exists mainly in works of science fiction. However, what was considered science fiction years ago today is accepted as scientific fact. What will it take for the scientific community to accept xenoarchaeology as a legitimate branch of archaeology?
There's some schools out there that offer some classes in ufology and things like that, and that's because it's been so mainstream. But as far as getting a school, it boils down to politics and money. If you have a pretty open-minded school and they think that they can make some money by getting a lot of kids, or students, should I say, not just kids, interested in the science of pursuing alien civilizations and stuff like that, I think it would go over really well. I don't think it would take much, because if you look to see what NASA's doing, their Mars rovers, the fact that we have found thousands of planets around other stars, there's a whole science of astrogeology that's out there, and they're already speculating and talking about alien civilizations. It pops up all the time. I don't think it would take much to have a degree in something like xenoarchaeology to get it set up. It wouldn't be difficult to do, and I think it'd be pretty exciting myself.
Do you communicate with academics in other cities or countries who are engaged in exploring the existence of alien artifacts in their areas? And if you do, are the artifacts they've investigated similar to those you've come across, or are they different? If so, what were their findings?
That's actually a very good question about dealing with other folks. People have a tendency to be a little secretive sometimes about their materials, even To the Stars Academy, except for some of the really nice stuff like the layered stuff. They've been a little secretive about their things that they found, although they say they have it. A lot of people say they have things, but they don't want to talk about it. And that's one of the problems we have out there these days. People need to come forward with whatever they've got and say, hey, this is what I've got. Put it out there so people can see it. I have been in touch with a few other people from not necessarily other countries. I've had people within the United States that claim that they have some artifacts, some of which I've looked at and investigated and found that, well, maybe they're not quite so exotic. Everything these days needs to be tested to figure out what it is, because you never know. So to answer your question more bluntly and straightforward, I really haven't had much conversation with other people in reference to materials that they have found, because no one has contacted me. Maybe this conversation that we're having will instill upon some people to contact me, and let's talk.
I will send that out to the universe. Sounds good.
Send it out to the universe, and let's see if we can get a little group together to talk about the things that they have found. I'm more than delighted to do that.
If you had the opportunity to take a spaceship to Mars and explore that planet, how would you go about searching for the existence of alien artifacts that might be there, and what exactly would you be looking for?
Alien artifacts on other worlds, I wouldn't know what to look for. However, biological things, which is what NASA is looking for, I know what to look for, because being a geologist, if I were to go to Mars, I would be doing the same thing that our little rovers are doing. They are slow, they're very meticulous at what they're looking for, and they take their time. And NASA had this saying, follow the water, because where there's water, there could be life, or where there are ancient hot springs, there could be life. So, and that is exactly what they did when they landed their rover, this last one, on Mars. They landed right in the middle of a lake, 3.5 million year old lake. They're looking at a delta, and it's a fine place to look. I would go to the perimeter, which they already have plans to do that, to look around the edges of the lake to see if they can find fossilized, they're called stromatolites, which are algae mats, this kind of life that you would find there that would be reasonably that old. I'd look for fossils. That's, that would be part of it. I would look for the fossils in the rocks. I'd look for it in limestones. I'd look for it in the siltstones and the sandstone. It's all the places that NASA are right now. I don't know if we could find pieces of metal from a crashed UFO on Mars. I have no idea. We can find evidence of microscopic stuff. We might even be able to find shells from a little bit later on if the conditions are right. I would look in the water. There's underground water there. I would look for little critters swimming around in the water. That would be it for me. I mean, that would be I'd go up there and go find some caves and start looking underground for some living thing. That was highlighted in a movie. I forgot the name of it, but there was a science fiction movie out where they didn't find any life until they went inside of a cave, and then there was dripping water in the cave. They found life in the dripping water, which was pretty cool.
I have to say, Frank, if we had more people such as yourself who have impeccable credentials and a high standing in the world of academia who would come out and at least explore possibility of the existence of alien beings, it would be great. Since sadly that's not the case, I want to thank you for having the courage to do it.
I appreciate that. I get that from lots of people out there. I got people saying, "Hey, why don't you write a book?" And you know what? I should write a book about all my experiences about hiding a gun under my pillow when I went to visit Earth Tech in Austin, Texas. That was run by Hal Puthoff and his crew of people. Because I heard all kinds of stories that they're going to steal your artifacts and they're going to poison you. And I heard all kinds of strange things from people. And they got me so scared that actually that night when I got there in Austin, I slept with a gun under my pillow, which was really kind of silly. I've never had any problems with anybody out there at all. And I think it's because I willingly want to share the things that I have. And it needs more research. I'm seriously considering, and they helped me one time before, which was To the Stars Academy, when I had my little incident with the BLM. They actually helped me a lot through one thing or another. They didn't get to keep the specimens that I gave them. I'm seriously considering, because they're the only ones that have the resources to actually look at all of this stuff, is to give everything I have or most of it to them and see if they can do something with it.
I would be amiss, Frank, if I did not touch base with you about New Mexico Rocks and Minerals, the collecting guide, which you co-authored. With mineral and rock collecting becoming an increasingly popular hobby for both serious collectors and weekend amateurs, it's a must read. Can you tell me what's covered in it?
That book is rather old right now. It hasn't been updated. I wrote it when I was in college. It's still available. New Mexico Rocks and Minerals, the collecting guide. I wrote it when I was in college with a good friend of mine by the name of Robert Narsavage. Haven't heard from him in years. Hopefully he's still alive. If not, he's probably looking for rocks and minerals in another place. But that covered every square inch of New Mexico as far as collecting. And you have to understand, this thing was written more than 20 years ago, but it still has a lot of really good locations for people to go and look for things in New Mexico with some fairly decent directions, especially if you don't mind walking and looking a little bit. It was a compilation of everything I could get my hands on at the time, coming from multiple resources. Like a lot of things, people go look for rocks and they don't want to walk the extra half a mile out from a location. They say, "Oh, you gave us this location, but there's nothing there." That's because the first 1,000 or 2,000 people have already walked within 50 yards of their car, and they need to walk and search a little bit farther. That's all part of exploration. You need to be inquisitive about your environment, and you need to explore. It's something that kids today kind of lack a little bit of. They don't like that exploration and curiosity thing. They seem to be missing that. They need to get outside more instead of doing this.
Or should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to order your book and learn about the other endeavors you are involved with, what is your contact information?
The book is, hopefully it's still being published. They can find it generally out maybe on eBay or something like that. I haven't looked in a long time. If people want to contact me, sometimes I'm a little slow at responding, but they can reach me at initial FKIMBLER at gmail.com. And I am more than happy to respond to folks.
Frank Kimbler, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. Yakking with you has been most informative. 1,000 thanks.
It is my pleasure. Maybe we can do this again and talk about maybe some other subject you'd like to talk about.
Absolutely. It's a given. Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure you don't miss any interviews on my free YouTube channel, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.